Women's rights in the United States have come a long way since colonies migrated to America. It all started in 1769 when the colonies agreed to adopt the English system, decreeing that women could not own property in their own name or keep any of their own earnings. In 1777, all states passed laws which take away any woman's right to vote. But in 1920, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution is ratified, ensuring the women the right to vote. 1923, the first version of the Equal Rights Amendment is introduced. It says men and women shall have equal rights throughout the United States and every place subject to its jurisdiction. 40 years later, in 1963, the Equal Pay Act is finally passed by Congress, promising equitable wages for the same work, regardless of race, color, religion, national origin, or sex of the worker. 1 year later, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act passes, prohibiting sex discrimination in employment. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is created.
Hi, I'm here with my mother and Astound designer Denise DeShone, and we were just chatting about women's rights and feminism and what that means today. And what were gender norms and rights like when you first started getting into college and starting a business?
Yeah, very difficult. When I first started the idea that I wanted to be an architect, I think it was less than 1% of females were getting into architectural school at the time. And so I had a counselor actually tell me, oh, you shouldn't be an architect, you need to be an interior designer, which I thought was very different because as much as I love interior design and it is very much a part of what I do, I wanted to build buildings. And so being very young and sort of naive at the time, I went into interior design to begin with, and though it was somewhat rewarding, I was still feeling like I was missing something, and I wanted to build buildings. And so went back to school after finishing interior design school and got into architectural school. And at the time, I would say in my entire class, there were 15 women. And when I graduated, there were only 2 of us.
In 1975, the Supreme Court denies states the right to exclude women from juries. And just 6 years later, Sandra Day O'Connor becomes the first woman to serve on the Supreme Court. In 1984, Geraldine Ferraro becomes the first woman to be nominated to be vice president on a major party ticket. The state of Mississippi belatedly ratifies the 19th Amendment, finally granting women the right to vote. Let that sink in. It wasn't until 1984 that every state had legally allowed women the right to vote. 1997, Madeleine Albright becomes the first female Secretary of State. 2007, Nancy Pelosi becomes the first female Speaker of the House. And in 2008, Alaska Governor Sarah Palin becomes the first woman to run for vice president on a Republican ticket. Hillary Clinton loses the Democratic nomination to Barack Obama.
Are there any examples of moments where you knew that you grew from those moments?
I think all of them you grow from. You take something away each time something like that happens. And I feel as a female, if I can make it a little better for someone coming up to stand on my shoulders to get a little higher, that's my job.
That's beautiful. And what is your perspective on gender norms and women's rights now?
Again, it's whatever I can do to, I always believe in best person for the job, regardless of gender. Mm-hmm. But if I can raise up females, I will. It's my job. I think for the longest time, we have been put into a box of, and had that experience, obviously, with my personal career and seeing it firsthand. And whenever we can lift someone up, we should lift them up, and even better if it's a female.
2017, Congress has a record number of women, with 104 female House members and 21 female senators. And so, how do the women today feel about their rights? Do they feel they have equal rights? Where do they see women's rights going in the future? And how can we get there?
Is there any place that you think we have room for improvement, or is there a certain thing you want to see, a certain place you want to see women's rights go?
It's such a loaded question with all of the Me Too movement, and I've thought about it a lot recently. And having both girls and I have a son, I try to look at the perspective of both sides of what's going on in the world today. And though I feel like women, equal right, equal pay, equal education, all of those things are important to everybody, I wouldn't want us as a gender, as a female gender, to lose sight that our male counterparts are just as important. However, we do have to fight harder to be equal in a lot of things that we do, and they need to also look at it from that perspective of that everyone should, that's performing, everyone that has equal education and rights, we should all, those are givens to all of us. We should all be afforded those luxuries or rights, regardless of who we are and where we come from and what we do. And I think if we can keep as females in perspective and not lose sight that every little thing is an issue and look at the bigger issues at hand, and for me those are obviously education, and I think that's where we need to lean our perspective, in those things. And I think it will then eventually flow over into the workplace, and not be so finger pointing to our male counterparts of every little thing they do. We need to educate everyone on differences.
Right, I agree. Equal rights for everybody.
That's right.
Woo!